First of all, thank you so much for taking the time to join us for this chat about mindfulness and self-care. I really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, no problem.
That. If you would mind just giving a little bit of an introduction of yourself and, how you became interested in mindfulness and stuff like that.
Yeah, sure. So I started, well, I should say first, I'm a librarian.
Mm-hmm.
I've been working in libraries for about 22 years, started early. So I've got a lot of experience with that. But with mindfulness, I started about 6 years ago. What got me started on the path was reading a book called 10% Happier by Dan Harris, who was a morning show anchor who suffered from anxiety. And he actually had a panic attack on the air. And I couldn't even imagine how stressful something like that would be.
Mm-hmm.
So I had seen this book at the library, and I thought, as a person who has struggled with anxiety and depression for a long time, I thought I should read this and see what Dan Harris actually did. So he went to a whole bunch of different traditions, and he learned about meditation, and he learned about mindfulness. And I thought this would be a good thing to study. So I started studying it then, and then a few years after that, it was all kind of self-study. So the good news is you all can definitely do that yourself with your library resources. I started studying with a unified mindfulness teacher in 2017, who is actually my bassoon teacher. Her name's Renee D. And she got interested in mindfulness because her son became a Buddhist monk. So she got certified, and then she's trained so many people. And the cool thing about that is that we've done all of that via Zoom. And that was before any of this happened. So
okay, that's awesome.
they have a lot of really cool virtual programs.
Oh, nice. So I guess, the first question, for you is, what exactly is mindfulness? We hear this term all the time. But I don't think we really know, a lot of people really know what exactly it is. What does it mean? What does it, encompass? How do you practice mindfulness? So could you give a little bit of clarification on that?
Yeah, absolutely. There are many different traditions that encompass it, but to bring it down to its basics, which I think is what patrons and people in the world want right now, is just the act of being in the present moment.
Right.
So there are lots of different things you can do, meditation, and there are exercises you can do that we can certainly talk about. But the very basics of it is being with the feelings and the sensations that you're having in the present moment. So if I were to do a very basic mindfulness exercise right now, I would focus on where I am, what I'm doing. I'm talking to you. I can see what's around me. I can feel my chair underneath me, the floor underneath me, what my feet are pressing down on. I can notice things like I can see your cat behind you, or I can hear the popcorn popping that my son wants. So those are all different things that we can focus on to just bring ourselves back to where we are.
Okay.
There are a lot of different things that you can do. And if you study mindfulness, you can go really deep into it. But I think just getting down to the basics is a good way for people to get themselves away from the stress of what's going on right now.
So basically, a very basic mindfulness exercise would be just kind of being in the moment and understanding what is in your immediate environment.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of noticing where you are in the present moment.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct? Is that kind of?
Yeah, that would be the very basic way to get started with it.
Okay. So, I mean, right now, especially, I think and especially if you are practicing that and trying to be in the moment, you know, you might feel some bad feelings. You know, you might feel anxiety, you might feel fear, you might feel uncertainty. So how do we deal with those feelings when they come up? You know, in a healthy way.
Mm-hmm. This can be really tough, especially if you have struggled with anxiety and depression in the past, or if you're struggling with it now. And I would encourage anybody watching this to get help if you need to talk through anything like that.
Right.
For me personally, there was a lot of discomfort when I first started. And I believe in the webinar that you watched, I talked a little bit about how it seems a bit counterproductive.
Right.
It seems a little bit contradictory to say, okay, I'm very uncomfortable with these feelings, but I'm going to feel them anyway. And you can push yourself as far as you can without getting yourself into that stressful place. So if let's say I'm dealing with some fear, like last night, I found out that some of my friends had lost some loved ones to COVID-19. So that would be something that might hit those fear triggers. So it's a matter of, for me, leaning into the feeling, letting the feeling be what it is, and then, as my teacher says, you can either turn further toward the feeling or you can turn away from it. So if you get to the point where you're uncomfortable, then you can draw back and go back to those facts about your environment. Sitting on that chair, what's in front of you, do you touch something, do you hear something, do you feel something, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's not easy, and it does take a lot of practice. So if you're new to it, it may not feel quite right for a while.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, you know, as humans, we're probably trained to avoid negative feelings at all costs, you know, and not necessarily sit there in them, and we try to distract ourselves and things like that. But I think, yeah, it is something that can be difficult at first, but practice can be definitely beneficial.
Another thing that we talk about in the practice is equanimity, which is there is no good feeling, there is no bad feeling. And that too can be a little bit of a stretch.
Right.
But if you kind of think of it abstractly, just think, I'm having a feeling. This feeling is called fear.
Right.
Just keep saying that to yourself, and it kind of takes the emotional sting away.
Yeah. Yeah. That's an interesting way of looking at it. Yeah. So a lot of us are self-isolating to a large extent with family, with roommates, you know, which can be, even if you enjoy your family, it can be tough to do that. You're around the same people constantly. Do you have any tips on, like, kind of maintaining your own mental well-being, you know, while you're self-isolating with family or roommates or whatever? And on the other hand, let's say you live alone and you can start getting feelings of loneliness.
Yeah, sure.
You know, how do we deal with this new, for many of us, most of us, new way of living, you know?
Yeah, it is hard. It's really hard. And for me, what it comes down to is making sure I have the time and space to be with my own feelings, and that I have the time and space to explore what's going on in my mind. So for me, that looks like meditation. For others, that may not. You may have a different way of self-care. So maybe going for a walk, or even if you can't leave your house, going to a different room from your family if you're able to. For people with small children, this is really hard. I am struggling with this myself with my children. They're constantly needing me, as you've seen. And it's difficult to work from home too and homeschool them and be around them. So we're all dealing with that. But some people may have, like you said, a roommate or a family member, and you might start to get a little snappy with each other.
Mm-hmm.
So making sure, if you can do that, to kind of isolate yourself from that person, give yourself that little bit of space, and let yourself work with your own feelings a little bit.
Right.
Maybe get a little bit deeper into the root of why you might be snapping at your roommate. So, what is the true cause of this? Is it really because she left the milk out on the counter, or is it because you've got your own feelings of, I'm so tired of this, I want to leave the house?
Yeah.
So I think you just have to come to terms with those feelings.
Right.
With loneliness too, I can definitely speak to that. I mean, even though I do have my family with me, I'm lucky that I have my family. I do miss my coworkers, I miss my friends, even my neighbors. I can really only like wave across from 6 feet away. So I think if you can connect with people via social media or Zoom or whatever you can do to get that human contact.
Right.
At the same time, you will have to do a little bit of boundary setting. Like we were talking about the news being overwhelming.
Right.
You have to make sure you give yourself that kind of space, and meditation can be helpful for that too. I kind of set a schedule for every day. This is what we're going to do at this time and this time at this time.
Right.
And that helps me, but that might not help everyone.
Mm-hmm.
So just kind of have to look at it and see what works best for you.
Right. Right. Exactly. So this kind of goes to what we were just talking about. An issue that I've had myself is I find myself constantly looking at the news. I have like 10 different news apps, local and national, and I just find myself constantly looking at it, and inevitably it makes you depressed. It's like everything is falling apart, it seems like. So how do we stay away from the news and from and then feeling maybe if you don't look at the news that you're being in some way irresponsible or you're going to miss something.
Mm-hmm.
How do we kind of force ourselves to stay away from that, at least to a large extent, because it's obviously not a healthy thing to be doing.
Right. There are a few things that I've been doing that I could recommend.
Mm-hmm.
So because we've been doing a lot of screen time in our house, not just because of work and school, but also because the kids are bored and they need a break,
Mm-hmm.
we're designating specific screen-free times.
Okay.
So put the phone, put it away, put it somewhere. And if it helps, you can do a mindfulness or a grounding exercise just to get you away from feeling like you have to check it, just to distract you. Another thing that you can do is mindful cleaning or mindful dishwasher loading or something like that. We're making a lot of dishes right now, so I feel like I'm doing them all the time. So if I start to feel a little bit on edge from the news,
right,
that's what I do. I just go over and I start mindfully loading the dishwasher and just, my bassoon teacher talks about this specifically because she does not like doing dishes. Mm-hmm. So she finds herself stomping over to the dishwasher and going, I hate doing this. But if you think, okay, it's a good way to practice detachment. So you're like, I am touching this dish now. I am smelling how gross it smells, that kind of thing. You can practice with uncomfortable feelings, mm-hmm. but they're not as uncomfortable as the news is stressing me out.
Right.
So those are some good ways to practice distancing from the stress at the same time as exploring mindfulness.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was finally understanding that I'm in accepting that I'm not going to miss anything if I put my phone down for 5 hours, or if I don't look at it before I go to sleep. Like, you're not going to miss anything that important. And once I finally understood that, I was able kind of to stay off the news in my phone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because it was this weird, we talk about FOMO, fear of missing out, like, that. That was helpful for me, is to say, you know what, I'm not going to miss anything. That's critical if I put my phone down for a while. So I think that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, I think at the beginning, when everything was first, all the news was first breaking, that was harder to do for a lot of people. And I know that I personally felt some fear every time there was a new announcement and I was waiting for what my library would do.
Right.
And there was fear about, will my staff be okay? Will they be protected?
Right.
And so I had to really work with that quite a bit. And that may continue to happen as stay-at-home orders continue to be issued from different states.
Right.
So we just kind of have to give ourselves some boundaries around it as well. Like in Ohio, we have our 2:00 DeWine conference. So you know that's coming, so you can prepare for it. And then when it's over, you can turn it off and process it.
Right. Right.
So everyone will have a different way of doing that. I'm not sure what you all are getting updates from in your state.
Yeah, in PA we're having a daily press conference with our health secretary and the governor. So we do have that here as well, where it's something we can stop, maybe pay attention to that, and then kind of process it. So are there any mindfulness resources that you would recommend?
There's a lot of stuff out there. So I taught a mindfulness class yesterday, and someone said there was a lot of stuff on YouTube, which I didn't even think about. Honestly, I've done some YouTube meditations with my kids. Like, I just typed in meditation for kids. But a few people said, like, some of the exercises that I've talked about, such as the waterfall exercise, where you imagine yourself behind a waterfall and all of your troubles are in the water. That is on YouTube. And I thought, oh, good, because I didn't even remember where I heard about that exercise. I just heard it somewhere. So I'm glad it's on YouTube. So you can just search for meditation and mindfulness on there. Excuse me. Dan Harris, who I mentioned, who wrote the 10% Happier, he's doing daily webcasts and podcasts about mindfulness.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I can definitely send you those resources to look at that you can share with everyone who's watching. There's a few other things. Unified Mindfulness is doing daily meditations on their Facebook page. All you have to do is like Unified Mindfulness on Facebook, and you can get that. My teacher is doing them at noon on Mondays. So if you want to tune in on Facebook Live to meditate with Renee, you can do that. She's amazing.
Yeah.
And there's also apps that are out there. I don't know. So all the content I've mentioned so far is free.
Right.
I don't know what the paid apps are doing right now, but I know there are free trials for a lot of them. So Headspace is really good. The Calm app and Insight Timer are all really good ones that you can use.
Okay, great. And then also, I don't know what kind of e-resources you guys have available, but I just want to point out through our Hoopla app, you can download some meditation music, and they also have some free streaming videos that have to do with meditation and relaxation. All that's free with your library card from the Allegheny County Library System. So that's
great
resource, yeah. Anything else you'd like to add that we didn't cover, or any final advice?
I think Yeah, if anybody wants to talk more about exercises, that would be, we could definitely do that. I'm happy to answer any follow-up questions that anyone has. And just, I would say, like you said, take a look at those resources you have available through your library. My
Mhm.
library also has yoga that you can do through Overdrive or through Hoopla. And moving your body is also a great way to get out some of that tension. Not everybody has that ability, if you have a physical limitation, but if there's something simple that you can do to move your body, I think that helps a lot too.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and yeah, we'll post links to all these resources that we've been talking about um, in the description for this video, so
Great.
people can access those. All right. Well, once again, I really, really appreciate your time. Um, and I hope that this was helpful for people. It was definitely helpful for me.
Great.
And thank you again for joining me today.
Great. Thanks, Anna.